Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We're at 37 Southeast 81st Avenue here in Portland, located down in the basement. We're at the front foundation wall of the house, down near the furnace. Dropping into a 4-inch cast iron cleanout. We're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water's currently running. You're zeroed out, and off we go. All right, making a transition here over to 6-inch concrete pipe. That joint right there looks pretty darn separated. My camera right now is flipped upside down. That's why the water line's overhead. But that joint right there is gapped out pretty far. All right, so my water line here, let's see, I'm not sure water's actually getting down the line. What I immediately was gonna say there right before I noticed how dry the line was, is when you start getting toilet paper piling up like that, you can see the pipe is bone dry. Tiny little bit of water line there, but the bottom of the pipe here is super, super dry. When you get debris piling up like that right at a pipe joint, that is an indicator that water is escaping the line. What happens is, once that water escapes, there's nothing else to carry the debris. And I've already surpassed that point by so far now and cleared the debris out of the way. You can see water still is not catching up. It eventually will. And we just swapped over to 6-inch clay there. What generally happens is the line will, or the ground will accept water up to a point. Once the ground is saturated enough around the line, the water will continue to go over the pipe joint, like nothing's there. Because sometimes you only catch this kind of stuff when the home is finally vacated. And then you've got a pretty decent offset here. That looks like the main connection right there, but the joint has become offset. The line is running at such a hard downward angle right now that stuff is probably clearing over the top of that without too much issue. That should also be well into city responsibility there. I'm going to try and go locate really quick and see where we are. And before I even go back out, I want to show this one more time. Water's still running from the bathtub behind me. 0 water's made it to this point yet. So my assumption is when we pull back, I'm going to shut the water off right now. When we pull back though, I'll turn it back on, and we're going to probably just see it dumping out through one of those pipe joints in the first 5-6 feet of the concrete pipe. All right, locate the camera right in the middle of the roadway. The line runs up as you face the front of the home from the street. The line here runs essentially dead straight. It runs down just to the right of the driveway. Water's back on. So one of the things, I've cambered over 25,000 sewer lines in my 15 years of doing this, and a trick I learned long ago on these old lines is to run really light volume water. Because if you run, like the bathtub there I had running really more at a pencil width, like a sink. The reason for that is if you run too high a volume water, it'll overwhelm the joint and shoot right over the top of it. And you won't even notice what I just found there. So, anyway, I've turned the sink on now, but got a little more volume coming down the line. At some point here, we'll likely see water get down the line, but anyway, the miracle of this whole thing is the line hasn't settled. And what I've noticed over the years is the lines that run at these really steep angles like this tend to resist settling a lot nicer when the joints are bad. They just don't settle quite as easily. Otherwise, oh, there we go, finally getting some water. Now, some is still getting out, some is getting down line. That width of that flow line there is not wide enough. Anyway, I think I've already displayed that enough at this point. Likely we're going to see a transition here at about the street curb. So all the concrete pipe on property I would recommend updating. We'll see if any clay exists on property or not, but everything as it relates to clay or concrete within homeowner responsibility I would recommend updating. Alrighty. So right there at that transition joint, I was at just past the street curb. Alrighty, and so right there I was getting around 6 foot 1 inches deep. So this is one of those lines, because the slope and grade, I mean this thing tanks like no tomorrow. It's got some fantastic slope to it. This is one where I would highly recommend looking into the prospect of an epoxy liner. You know, see which shakes out to be the most cost effective, but I think this would be a very good candidate for that. You've got a nice 45-degree angle clean out shot right into the line. Yeah, you can see where that debris is piling up there. We're right in the zone where that water is struggling to get down line. And the minute I got past that debris, the way that the line was bone dry like that is a dead giveaway that that water's not getting where it needs to go on a regular basis. All right, so what I did here is I pushed my camera just past the transition. Normally what I would do if this were a plastic line is park the camera right here and dead center the antenna on the joint. When you do that in cast iron and concrete like that, what you'll get is a really wonky signal that comes out of the ground. So anyway, my locate there is right as the concrete meets the front yard. There's a little walking path. You'll see a green T marking just into the yard. Just know I did that for the sake of not having to paint the concrete. One, the concrete, it's raining right now, that marking won't last, but two, I just didn't want to paint the concrete and stain that all up. So, but that marking there is slightly offset to where I'm seeing things at the curbs. The line may run at a little bit of an angle. I'm going to do one right here in the middle of this span, but overall, line runs pretty much dead straight. It just might run at a slight angle. It's kind of hard to tell there. And here, about halfway down the yard, my locate there still looks like the line's running at a slight angle, so what I would recommend here is relocating. I'll put that on the report, or use caution if you do any digging. The line may not run, it may run dead straight. I might be getting interference because of the locate getting thrown off a little bit because of the slope of the hillside. These hard angled hillsides like that will do that sometimes. Anyway, from here at about 5 feet to approximately 30 feet, 31 feet, at the transition, I highly recommend an update to the line. I would look into epoxy lining, pipe bursting, trenchless, semi-trenchless, and good old-fashioned trenching. See which one shakes out to be the most cost-effective. You're approximately about 6 feet deep across most of the repair here because the property provides most of the slope to the line. You don't see that depth change a whole lot. It's getting around 6 foot 3 inches deep, right near the transition from cast to concrete. And if you go, whether you go the trenchless route or not, I highly recommend taking that repair just beyond the street curb, even if it's just 6 inches. Those transition joints are the weakest joints in your line to roots. And the last thing I want to see happen is for that to ever occur and happen right on the dividing line. It can get a little hinky working with the city on those ones when it happens right where responsibility changes hands. It's kind of a gamble whose responsibility they're going to deem it be. So if that transition happens just after the curb, it undoubtedly takes place in city territory. Otherwise, cast iron pipe here looks like it is in good shape, flows well. The cast I can see. Then again, you can always inform the city of the offset joint there out at the main connection. Sometimes that happens because the joint goes bad, exposes to the ground, similar to the other joints in the line that are open to the ground, and it can lead to slow but sure progression. It can also cause settling issues to the road bed above the sewer line. So that may be one you want to forward onto the city so they at least are aware of it. From a flow standpoint, because of how hard the line dives, it's not doing a whole lot right now to affect flow, but that can slowly change over time if that joint is exposed to the ground. And after any repairs are done, make sure a rescope is performed to check the work. It's very important to do that. And if you're doing any kind of dig repairs, do that when the trenches are closed, but before concrete gets poured to check for settling issues.